welcome to another episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Well, folks, I am back for more Codo Cinema. Well, at least now for the month of November. It's gonna be a good one. I could guarantee that. Now, before I dive into the movie I'm going to talk about, I thought I'd share something about myself. Well, apparently, you all probably remember. You're all probably wondering what happened. You're all probably wondering, and I'm pretty sure some of you probably may or may not know. But last year, when I ended Codo Cinema Horror Month, which was back in 2024 with the 1979 Alien movie, and then jumping straight to the Shazam movie for Codo Cinema Christmas Month. That was last year when I was sick with mycoplasma pneumonia. And come to think of it, since the month of November has entered, this is technically my 1 year anniversary of me being sick with pneumonia. And I was in the hospital for like 6 days. And that was from November 1st to November 7th. So that was almost a week in the hospital with mycoplasma pneumonia, while the remainder of the year for me in 2024 was basically walking pneumonia. Now, oddly enough, I am 100% better. It's kind of scary to think about this too and to dwell on it because it is a thing I'm talking about because being in the hospital for almost a week with pneumonia about a year later. And yeah, come to think of it, that is pretty scary. And and of course, like I had to pause Codo Cinema for like almost a month of no recordings throughout the month of November for Codo Cinema. So yeah. But thankfully though, I'm thankful for God and everyone else around me who were able to help me out throughout the process of last year, especially with my time in the hospital. I am 100% better, although I am still moving forward, going strong, and of course, obviously enough, obviously enough, life is going good with a lot of stuff going on, including work. Like, for example, I'm working 3 jobs currently. Like, I'm still working full time at Naperville Central as a special education assistant, Naperville Community Television as a sports videographer, and Center Stage Theater as a theater technician. And yes, that is 3 jobs, and it's a lot. It's a lot to handle, and for the most part, I'm doing pretty well with it. Although I still gotta remember to keep my health in check and make sure I get enough and to make sure I get enough exercise in, and of course, getting my steps in, eating good food. That type of stuff, just to make sure I'm going well and strong. And you know what? After what I for what I happened, and you know what? For what happened last year, it was a real big deal. Last year back in November was a really big deal, and that's something that I'm going to remember about. But anyway, I'm just glad that this year has been pretty kind to me. And for the most part, yes, I'm still dealing with a lot of things, including work and my personal life. But you know what? Life's gonna go on pretty well. You just gotta keep moving forward. So yeah, so there's my that's something to talk about. So there you have it. That's kind of my thing right there. A bit of a reflection, but also moving forward of what life's ahead, right? But anyway, with that being said, to those who are new to the podcast, welcome to Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. If you are listening to this on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more content. And if you are listening to this on Spotify and Podbean, don't forget to hit the follow button as well. All right. With that being said, let's get to the movie that we are going to talk about for this episode. And of course, to anybody who's looking at the movie poster on the movie that I'm going to talk about, yes, I'm going to talk about the 2025 American science fiction action film Tron Ares. Now, Tron Ares is the third installment in the Tron series and a sequel to Tron Legacy, which came out in 2010. The third film is directed by Joachim Roning, if I'm saying his name right, and I do apologize if I mispronounce any of the names, but The director of this movie is Joachim Roning, and the film stars Jared Leto, Greta Lee, Evan Peters, Jodie Turner-Smith, Hazan Minhaj, Arturo Castro, and Gillian Anderson, with Jeff Bridges reprising his role as Kevin Flynn from the first two movies. And the screenplay and story is provided by Jesse Wiguto and David DiGiulio, with characters by Steven Lisberger and Bonnie MacBird, with Jared Leto serving as a producer alongside Sean Bailey, Emma Ludbrook, Jeffrey Silver, Steven Lisberger, and Justin Springer, with cinematography provided by Jeff Cronenweth, edited by Tyler Nelson, with music provided by Nine Inch Nails, and it was distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures. It was released on October 6th of 2025 at the El Capitan Theater and October 10th, 2025 in the United States. And it has a runtime of 119 minutes and it has a budget of 180 to 220 million. Now, of course, development of the sequel to Tron Legacy began in October of 2010 by franchise creator Steven Lisberger. In March of 2017, however, Walt Disney Pictures shifted plans toward a soft reboot with Leto playing a new character. Garth Davis was set as director in August of 2020 when Wiguto was working on the script but stepped down in January of 2023. Roning replaced him a month later. Production was expected to begin in August of 2023 but was delayed by the 2023 Writers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA strikes. And filming ultimately began in January of 2024 in Vancouver and finished in May. By August, industrial rock band Nine Inch Nails was announced to be composing the score. The band's members Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross served as executive producers on the film alongside Tron Legacy director Joseph Kosinski. And of course, prior to the film's release, the film has grossed $123.4 million worldwide against a production budget of $180 to $220 million. And of course, this is basically a box office bomb, although despite the mixed reviews it got from critics, the film is projected to lose approximately $132 million. Okay, so technically it's been like a month since this movie was in theaters, right? Well, a month if you count the release date in El Capitan Theater, but of course, almost a month in the United States, if you know what I'm saying, right? So basically about a month. So within that range. So it's been in theaters for a month, and it's basically a box office bomb, making only $123.4 million on a budget of $180 to $220 million. Now, despite the mixed reviews, I thought the movie was okay, but to be quite honest though, I find it to be somewhat forgettable at times. The only thing, there are some things that I remembered from this movie, but it's basically the visuals and the soundtrack by Nine Inch Nails. Like the music alone, it's just the composition music, if you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, those were the only things that I liked from this movie, to be quite honest. I mean, I like the visuals and the music and the score by Nine Inch Nails. And then, I guess Jared Leto, I thought Jared Leto was okay, but his character, in my opinion, he was basically forgettable. And I believe a lot of characters in this movie was completely forgettable. And on top of that, the only character that at least I can remember from this movie is Kevin Flynn, which is basically the character that's being played by Jeff Bridges, who only has a cameo for about 5 minutes. Spoiler alert. And yes, we are going into spoiler territory for this. And yes, we are going into spoiler territory for this review, by the way, so spoiler alert. Now, of course, before I go further deep into the movie, I want to give you my background on Tron because, to be quite honest, though, I'm not big into Tron, right? Or the franchise itself, right? Like I'm well aware that I'm well aware that there are two Tron movies. The first one that came out in 1982, and the second one that came out in 2010. In fact, I didn't even know there was an original Tron movie that came out in 1982 after I saw Tron Legacy, to be honest. Like I saw Tron Legacy when I was in elementary school. Like it was in 2010. That's when that movie came out. I was still in elementary school around that time. But to be quite honest, though, I didn't remember much about Tron Legacy except for, Jeff Bridges. Of course, as I got older, I started to appreciate the visuals a lot more. Like to be honest, the visual effects in the world of Tron is amazing. Like you're basically inside the computer grid thinking of like what the world is like inside of a computer, right? Kind of like the Matrix, if you know what I'm saying, right? But of course, the first Tron movie came out right before the Matrix, if you know what I'm saying, right? And the visuals in the first Matrix movie is amazing. So and of course Tron as well, right? Now, of course, there was going to be a third official Tron movie with Joseph Kaczynski, Olivia Wilde, Garrett Hedlund, and of course Jeff Bridges, alongside with Adam Horowitz and Steven Lisberger. But apparently that changed when Disney decided to shift gears and of course, do a soft reboot, basically canceling any hopes of a third Tron movie with with the actors, right? Now, of course, yes, Olivia Wilde and Garrett Hedlund made photo cameos at the end of Tron Ares, right? And then that was originally going to set up a possible fourth movie, but I don't know if that's the case. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, so let's keep going. So yeah, there was basically, a new Tron movie, but being rebooted, being a soft reboot as Tron Ares, right? And of course, Joachim Roning was attached to direct, although it was Garth Davis, but it was Roning who took over for Davis's direction after he stepped down. And of course, we got a new cast of characters, right? So it's a new cast of characters, and apparently, Evan Peters plays a character with the last name Dillinger, and Dillinger is also a character from the first two Tron movies as well. Now, of course, Roning confirmed in September of 2025 that Jeff Bridges would be the only actor from the previous films reprising his role as Kevin Flynn, while affirming that neither Hedlund as Sam Flynn or Cillian Murphy as Ed Dillinger Jr. would return from Legacy, both due to creative choices and a lack of interest from the actor's part. Springer also felt that throwing a cameo appearances in a quote parade of people felt like fan service who would not serve the story, so they opted to only bring back characters in a way that reminded the audience of their love for the franchise, but by surprising them in a way that works. Despite the film not being set to address the cliffhanger ending of Legacy or the fates of Sam and Cora, Springer affirmed that it doesn't contradict that ending and that Legacy remains canon. Of course, Sam and Cora were the two characters in Tron Legacy, just to throw that out there. That's Garrett Hedlund's and Olivia Wilde's characters from the second movie. Now, of course, the studio planned to add an AI-generated character that would have been a sidekick to Flynn, a soldier named Bit, entering the real world, but the plan was abandoned before filming to avoid potential controversy in the midst of societal and governmental issues surrounding the regulation of AI in filmmaking. Now, of course, to move forward, of course, we got other writers, and of course, some of the writers like Billy Ray, Jack Thorne, Tom McCarthy, Megan McDonnell, and Jez Butterworth, among a few other writers, also contributed to off-screen additional literary material credits. Now, of course, Jesse Wigutol received sole credit for the film's screenplay. And of course, in April, Jeff Bridges, who portrayed Kevin Flynn and Clue in the previous Tron films, confirmed his involvement in the film. Although his character Clue is not in this movie because his character was basically, the character of Clue was killed off in Tron Legacy. And while the visual effects was provided by Industrial Light and Magic, Distillery VFX, Image Engine, Lola VFX, G-Monk, Opsis, and Imaginary Forces, those were the visual effect companies. Those were the companies that provided the visual effects, with Tyler Nelson serving as the editor. So apparently this movie was basically going back and forth between whether or not this film will pick up with Legacy or be, being a soft reboot. And I kind of got a feeling it kind of did a bit of both. But I feel like this movie was basically being more nostalgic rather than telling a good story. And what's bad enough about this is that I went to see this movie with my twin brother Mike, and for one part of the movie, I actually fell asleep, believe it or not. Yeah, no kidding. I actually fell asleep for part of Tron Ares. It's bad enough when a movie can make you fall asleep, right? Right? And I think it was during a motorcycle chase, believe it or not, because the cool thing about Tron is that it has like the Tron motorcycles, and I thought those were the coolest vehicles that Tron has ever had in the franchise, if you know what I'm saying, right? And also, funny enough, over the summer, me and my family went to Disney World, and the first thing that we rode on was the Tron Light Cycle ride, but it's basically called the Tron Cycle ride, which is basically a high speed roller coaster called Tron Light Cycle Run at Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom. Although, the ride itself is basically a minute long, but it is a fun ride. Like it's basically a fun ride. Despite the long wait, the ride itself is about a minute long. And of course, while you're waiting in line, whether it's for the fast pass or just a regular long wait, you hear the music from Daft Punk playing in the background. Also to mention, Daft Punk provided the score for Tron Legacy. The music for Tron Ares is provided by Nine Inch Nails, to which Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross are the band members for Nine Inch Nails. But anyway, with that being said, let's get to the breakdown of this movie, shall we? So the movie opens up 40 years after the events of Tron. Both Encom and rival Dillinger Systems, led by former Encom executive Ed Dillinger's grandson Julian, have been engaged in a race to bring digital constructs into the real world, but can so far only sustain them for 29 minutes before de-resolution. Eve Kim, the current CEO of Encom, succeeding Kevin Flynn's son Sam, has located a remote station in Alaska that Flynn set up decades ago, and which her younger sister Tess rediscovered. Kim and her confidant Seth believe that on one of Flynn's old computers lies the permanence code, the secret to breaking the 29 minutes barrier. Simultaneously, at Dillinger Systems headquarters, Julian debuts Ares, the newest master control program from his grid, marking humanity's first contact with artificially intelligent beings. Julian pitches Ares as the perfect soldier who is also fully expendable. However, Ares demonstrates an unexpected sense of self awareness, noting Julian's indifference to whether he lives or dies, and also taking an interest in the natural phenomena of the real world, such as rain. After meeting Ares, Julian's mother, former CEO Elizabeth, chastises him for failing to mention Ares can only survive outside the grid for 29 minutes. Julian claims it would soon be irrelevant, launching a cyber attack on Encom's mainframe led by Ares to steal any leads they have on the permanence code. A battle between ENCOM and security programs and the infiltrators ensues, with Ares downloading Eve Kim's personal data. During their escape, a member of his team, Caius, is injured and Ares, in spite of his programming, tries to save him. However, Julian extracts his team and disables ENCOM's grid before he can do so. Back in Flynn's base, Eve and Seth have found the permanence code, successfully transferring a digital naval orange tree into the real world, breaking the 29-minute barrier. She and Seth download the code to a hard drive and set off back to ENCOM headquarters, informed of Julian's attack by her lieutenant AJ. Eve sets off on her own, but Julian and Ares track her through the grid. Julian then sends Ares and second in command Athena after Eve into the real world to acquire the code. The two pursue Eve into the city on the light cycles, bisecting a police car and trapping her in a parking garage. After striking Athena with her cycle, Eve then hijacks it to escape, but is only eventually cornered by Ares in an empty port. Rather than allowing the code to fall into Julian's hands, Eve breaks the pen drive, dropping it into the water. Ares, about to, disintegrates again, starts to collapse, observing Eve's empathetic response. With seconds left before he and Athena, disintegrate, Julian has Eve digitized and transferred into the Dillinger grid. As Elizabeth again criticizes Julian for this escalation, Julian becomes more determined to recuperate by obtaining the permanence code. Ares informs him that the code can be attained from Eve's identity disk, but the process will kill her, which to his surprise, Julian accepts. After telling Athena Julian is indisposed and to leave him alone with Eve, she grows suspicious and seeks an audience with Julian himself. Ares then offers to help Eve escape as she will help him achieve permanence and escape the grid once and for all. Once she accepts, Athena returns with new orders from Julian: kill Ares and Eve to extract the code. The two escape in a watercraft made of hard lights, materialize in Dillinger's hangar, and break out of the facility. Julian then summons Athena and names her the new Master Control program after Ares defects, instructing her to obtain the code by any means necessary, obtaining a Dillinger particle laser, and sets off in pursuit in a glider. En route back to ENCOM headquarters, Eve and Ares reflect on each other's motivations. Ares deduces that Eve's quest to obtain the permanence code was driven by the death of her sister and her perceived inferiority for developing games and other recreational software instead of working to save lives. Eve realizes a copy of the permanence code may yet exist on another backup of Flynn's system, kept and preserved as a museum piece at ENCOM. The two reunite with Seth at ENCOM's offices in order to digitize and upload Ares to Flynn's grid. Athena shows up and destroys their particle laser, and trapping him in the server before chasing Eve through the office. The sprinkler system activates and Athena demonstrates a fleeting moment of self-awareness from the sensation of falling rain before, disintegrating once more. When AJ and his assistant Aaron walk in to ask what happened, Seth and Eve explain the only way to free Ares and stop Julian is to hack Athena's particle laser. The four immediately began working to accomplish this as Ares finds his way around Flynn's primitive grid, meeting an aspect of Flynn himself. Julian, enraged at his latest failure to reacquire Eve, is berated by Elizabeth, once more, who is having her board reinstating her as CEO. Athena rematerializes on her own and starts bringing forth reinforcements herself. After Elizabeth tries to shut off the particle lasers, Athena stabs and mortally wounds her, reminding Julian he instructed her to obtain the code by any means necessary. Elizabeth spends her last words blaming Julian for everything that has transpired until now, including her imminent death. Back on Flynn's grid, Ares and Flynn discuss Ares' desire for permanence. Flynn is fascinated by the notion of a malfunctioning program who wants to live, referring to Ares as well as his ability to understand his own internal motivations. Flynn grants him the key to permanence, but warns him that if he dies in the real world, he will die for real with a better name, for it being the impermanence code. Ares then rematerializes in Flynn's arcade in a new neon white suit. Athena pilots a recognizer ship into the city as she scans for Eve. When Eve and the others realize what is happening, she takes off running to buy them more time to hack Dillinger's grid. Athena's ship is not Athena's ship is shot by military aircraft, but not before taking both of them out. She then traps Eve in a cage of hard light, preparing to return to Dillinger headquarters in a light tank. Ares intercepts her with his new identity disk, destroys the tank before dueling Athena. AJ, Seth, and Aaron successfully penetrate the Dillinger mainframe and shut it down before Athena disintegrates permanently. The Dillinger headquarters are raided by SWAT team, and rather than being taken into custody, Julian reboots this grid and digitizes himself. Eve and Ares go their separate ways, with ENCOM using the permanence code to develop climate change resistant agriculture and new cures for various diseases. Upon returning to Flynn's base, Seth brings her a postcard from Ares explaining that he has been living outside the grid and intends to find others like him. And of course, in a mid credit scene, Julian obtains an identity disk that belonged to his grandfather's program, Sark, and starts to transform into a new being. And yes, that is it. That is basically the breakdown of Tron Ares. Now, to be quite honest though, you probably might be wondering, the film itself sounds interesting, right? True. But apparently, not so much for a lot of people who are, seeing this movie, right? Now, this movie did not make its money back. And it grossed $123.4 million on a budget of 180 to 220 million, despite the mixed reviews, right? Add insult to injury, Deadline Hollywood reported a total cost of $347.5 million, including production and advertising, and estimated that it would ultimately lose the studio over $132 million, with an estimated box office total gross of $160 million. And I'll be honest, that is not a good sign. It is literally not a good sign at all. This movie has a big budget, right? But apparently the story is not that great. It seems as though there were some rewrites going on that added to the budget, right? And of course, and Disney at this point have no idea where they want to go with their IP products, right? Because Tron itself is basically being treated as an IP product at this point. You can definitely tell right away the Walt Disney Company is trying to push the nostalgic bait on this movie, which I don't mind the movie being nostalgic, but if you're going to tell a story, find the balance between nostalgia and good storytelling, right? I mean, you can have a movie with a good story and nostalgia, right? And yes, there are bad movies with nostalgia, plus movies that have that are basically a mix of both, right? A mix of both good and bad nostalgia and good and bad writing, if you know what I'm saying, right? Like Tron Ares should have been this movie where it would have been a fun, nostalgic movie, right? Which in some parts it is, but of course, you're basically wondering what is going on, and it kind of left me confused a little bit, right? Now, look, I'm not a fan of the Tron franchise. I never was, to be quite honest. I mean, look, I wasn't into Tron, to be honest, but at the same time, it does leave you wondering, is this franchise really worth it, right? Is it worth the watch? For some cases, yes. but for some, not so much. That depends on where you want to go with this franchise. Like, let's go back to 1982 for a sec. The first Tron movie. That movie came out, as I mentioned, in 1982, and at the time, the computer animation was brilliant. Like, it is amazing computer animation, mixing with live action and computer animation. In fact, and while the movie did not get, and while the movie wasn't an, and while the movie didn't get nominated for best visuals, and to put this out there, the reason why the first Tron movie did not get nominated for best visuals because the Academy thought that the movie would be cheating, right? Because because the computer graphics in this movie is basically animation, right? It's computer animation, and it looks real good for a film that came out in 1982. Tron Legacy really updated those visual effects, but you can't deny the computer animation in 1982. But also to bring this up, this movie actually brought in the 1982 effects into the scene with Jeff Bridges, and it is one of the few nostalgic moments in this movie, right? Where Ares meets Kevin Flynn for the first time in the computer animation from the first Tron movie, and I thought it was really cool, and I thought it looked cool. And of course, seeing Jeff Bridges in this movie for despite his cameo appearance, I thought he did a fine job. Although, yet again, he's probably in it for a paycheck. And I'm pretty sure everybody was in for a paycheck on this movie. But I'll be honest, I thought everybody in this movie did fine. But I thought all the actors in this movie did fine, but at the end of the day, they were just forgettable. Like, besides Kevin Flynn and maybe Ares, the rest of the characters were just, forgettable, right? For a movie called Tron, you're basically being sucked into the visual effects of this movie, right? You're basically being sucked into the grid. The world of Tron plus the music, right? The music by Nine Inch Nails. Before I even started recording this episode, I had a thing in mind. What if the Tron movies only had the characters not talk, but you let the visuals and the music tell the story, right? I mean, what if the Tron movies only had visuals, music, and characters with character moments, but no dialogue? I mean, it would have been a bold move not to try, but at the same time, it kind of leaves you wondering, what if you let the visuals and music tell the story for these characters, right? Come to think of it, that would have been an interesting take, but that's just my theory. That's just my point of view on Tron, okay? And also, speaking of Tron, there is a character named Tron, right? So, and of course, Tron is not in this movie. Yeah, you heard that right. There is a character named Tron, and Tron is not in the movie Tron Ares. So why is he not in this movie? Well, one of the reasons because the film wants to focus on a new story with new characters, taking a different creative direction from the previous movies. And on top of that, the actor who played Tron, he's being played by Bruce Boxleitner, and he played Tron in the first two Tron movies. Now, of course, he is not in the third Tron movie. And I believe one of the reasons why is because the Walt Disney Company didn't, invite him back, right? They didn't really invite him back. And I think it's because he also lost, and I think another reason to back this up too is that he kind of lost interest in the franchise, right? So Bruce Boxleitner, he was not asked to be in this movie for some reason. Now, of course, prior to the movie's release, he encouraged fans to still support the movie. Which, to be honest, though, I thought that was not. I thought that that is nice, but I don't know how many. I don't know if there's gonna be a lot of people who will be on board with it. But knowing the fact, you gotta give Bruce some credit here. He at the very least kind of show a bit of good sport, right? He's basically showing support, like saying, "Hey, I may not be in this movie, but I got a feeling this movie might be all right. So why don't you go check it out?" So I guess it's not. So I guess it's not all bad, but. If you're gonna have a film named Tron, if you're not gonna have the Tron character, why bother making this movie at all? Like, I don't mind new characters, but the thing is, the new characters in this movie were not that interesting at all. In fact, to move forward, here's a little trivia for you. The original title for Tron 3 was going to be Tron Ascension, and that film was conceived as a direct sequel to Tron Legacy in 2010, slated to go into production around 2012. Script issues caused the film to be delayed several years until 2015. At that point, the box office failure of Tomorrowland, which came out in 2015, along with the release of the first of Disney's era Star Wars projects, resulted in the cancellation of Tron Ascension. And years later, with the onset of the 2023 WGA and SAG AFTRA strikes, the script was pulled off the shelf and rewritten before getting thrown into production so Disney would have a 2025 tentpole film for the fall. Unfortunately, the tentpole fell off the grid for that. So anyway, yeah. So basically, Tron is basically at this point is basically an IP, just like Star Wars and Tomorrowland, and of course Pixar as well. You know. Also, going back to Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, the two of them actually have cameo appearances as the two F-35 pilots in the final battle. Now, of course, Tron Ares is rated PG-13, which is basically, the first Tron movie to receive that rating, while the previous two films were PG. Now, of course, Jared Leto. Now, look, I thought Jared Leto was okay, but I had to be completely honest. Um, Jared Leto's leading man role has started to, die down a bit, to be quite honest. I don't mind Jared Leto being in this movie, but Jared Leto, like, he's not that great of a leading man, to be quite honest. I'm sorry. I thought his role in Morbius was okay, but at the same time, like, yeah, Jared Leto wasn't that great at all as Morbius. I mean, I thought it was okay, but looking back at it, nah, I don't think he's leading man material for that. Not even his role as the Joker could save his leading man role. Also, on top of that, he also appeared in the remake of the Haunted Mansion movie that came out in 2023, where he played the Hatbox Ghost, right? And his voice was basically, deepened, right? As for Tron Ares, I thought he was okay, but at the same time, for what went down behind the scenes, he's basically, he's basically taking it too seriously, if you know what I'm saying, right? Jared Leto spent the entire shoot in character as Ares, not speaking to anyone unless necessary, and having everyone refer to him as such. Jeff Bridges was the only one who didn't follow this rule, reasoning that since his character Kevin Flynn is the creator of the grid, he's therefore above Ares and could call him whatever he wanted. So it comes to show that Jared Leto is taking himself too seriously. Like, he's being like one of those like actors where he is basically, difficult to work with and not, communicating with anyone unless necessary. Having everyone to refer to him as such, if you know what I'm saying, right? So basically, he's kind of like, being difficult to work with. Now, I don't mind actors taking roles seriously, but if you take it too seriously, people are going to start to think differently about that person, if you know what I'm saying, right? All right. So anyway, was there anything? Now, of course, like I didn't like the story at all. I didn't think the story was that great, to be quite honest. Like it was, I mean, it was interesting, but it wasn't really, it wasn't really pulling me in, except for the visuals and and the music, if you know what I'm saying. But I thought the action was okay. I thought the action was fine. I mean, the motorcycle, I mean, the light cycle, the final battle. I thought that was good. But of course, knowing the fact that the character of Tron is not in this movie, just it just felt it didn't feel right to me. But anyway, for the characters, obviously the villain in this movie is Athena, but her character was pretty forgettable, and she gets a somewhat of a redemption towards the end, saying that she's just only following orders, right? And that's what she said after she gets killed, right? She's just basically, following orders, right? And of course, Ares is basically being, going into the real world like, hey, I'm no longer an AI. I'm just gonna go to the real world. Look at me. I found characters from the second movie, Sam and Cora. Basically, photo cameos, right? Yeah, yeah. Those two characters, yeah. They basically had cameos, photo cameos, so to say, right? And also, Evan Peters' character, Julian Dillinger, like, while I think he was an interesting character, but I feel like the film barely had anything for him to do, right? Like, he's just a forgettable, stereotypical business operator CEO, if you know what I'm saying, right? And then, of course, Eve, I'm sorry to say this, Eve Kim was basically a forgettable character. Like, Greta Lee is a fine actress, but I have to be honest, her character was pretty forgettable. Like, I don't remember anything from her character at all. And I'm pretty sure that's basically the whole point of this movie. The whole point of this movie is basically forgettable. And it's not that and it's not basically, pulling a lot of people in, right? It's just basically, a forgettable, nostalgic fueled ride, if you know what I'm saying, right? Also to mention, David Warner, who played the original Dillinger in the first Tron movie, archive audio recordings of David Warner's character of, well, not just Dillinger, but Master Control Program was used in this movie, right? David Warner passed away in 2022, and he played the original villain from the first Tron movie called the Master Control Program, and archive audio recordings were played in this movie. So yeah. Now, of course, going back to Athena. Now, Jodie Turner Smith played Athena, but her role, to be quite honest, was forgettable. So was all the other characters. Even Elizabeth Dillinger was a forgettable character, but she's basically, both Elizabeth Dillinger um and Athena were just basically there to be just, girl boss characters, you know what I'm saying, but without any memorable motivations, if you know what I'm saying, right? I don't mind girl boss character. I mean, I don't mind girl boss characters. I really don't. But if you're gonna have a girl boss character that is so forgettable, why bother? I mean, why bother? I mean, I just wish the movie. I just wish there was a better script for this movie, because the whole idea of Tron Ares, you know, bringing the world of Tron from the grid to the real world, sounds like an awesome idea. I like that idea. I just wish the script could have done a lot more. In fact, Ares is also a meaning for, war, right? Kind of like the god of war, Ares, the god of war, right? And Jared Leto's character is named Ares, which also means war, right? So wouldn't that be an interesting plot of where the war between the real world and the grid? Can you imagine a Tron movie where the real world and of course the grid coming together for a science fiction battle? That would have been awesome. And of course, and of course connecting it to more, and of course having more of a connection to the first two Tron movies a lot better, bringing back the other characters like Cora and Sam Flynn. Like, That would have been awesome. Having Sam Flynn and Korra team up with Ares to fight in this war for the grid and the real world. That would have been awesome. And in fact, why couldn't they also bring in Tron, right? To have the three team up with Tron to take down Stark, right? Stark, right? Why couldn't Evan Peters' character be the new descendant to Stark, right? Because the mid-credit scene teased Dillinger's character to be Sark, right? That is David Warner's original character. Like, why couldn't they have Sark be the main villain, right? And have Athena be the second in command, right? That would have been awesome. I mean, but that sounds like a better movie, come to think of it, if you have the right script, right? Not just this mid-credit scene where you're gonna tease a new Tron movie, and come to think of it, with the result of the box office, I don't think there's going to be a sequel at all. Like, can you imagine a better script and have Joseph Kosinski being brought on board? Because Joseph Kosinski, who did Tron Legacy, is an executive producer, and I think he would have been a good choice to be involved with this movie a lot more than what the final result had, right? Now, of course, it is unclear if there will be more Tron movies, because as of now, the box office for Tron Ares is not looking good. So I got a feeling this movie is going to be, shut down, so to say. So apparently, yeah. So it seems as though Disney had no idea where they want to go with this movie, right? And I got a feeling, and of course, the Tron franchise has a trilogy now. We got the first Tron movie that came out in 1982, Tron Legacy that came out in 2010, and now Tron Ares, which means that the third Tron movie is going to end the trilogy on a whimper, if you know what I'm saying, right? But other than that, while I do think the movie is still fine on its own, I think this movie will definitely get a cult following, just like the first two movies. But we'll never know. We'll see what happens later down the line. But on top of that, I thought the movie was okay. You're just basically in it for the visuals, the action, and the music. Not so much for the characters, aside from maybe Kevin Flynn, who was played by Jeff Bridges. But other than that, that's my take on this movie. So anyway, there you have it, folks. That is my take on Tron Ares. Now, sure, I may sound a bit harsh on this whole review, but that's just my opinion. It's my opinion, but if you have a different point of view on this movie, feel free to please let me know in the comment section below if you like this movie or not. But anyway, with that being said, that will be a wrap for this episode. And to anybody who is listening, what did you guys think of Tron Ares? Have you seen this movie? Have you not seen this movie? Did you think the movie was okay? Did you like this movie? Did you not like this movie at all? I would love to hear your thoughts. But anyway, that'll be a wrap for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in to Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Remember to watch movies and stay positive.